He had always believed the land understood patience better than people did. The red soil stretched far beyond the horizon, broken only by rows of stubborn crops and the rusted silhouette of old farming machines that hummed slowly under the twin suns. On this distant frontier world, survival depended on persistence more than skill. The weather shifted without warning, storms arrived like silent predators, and the soil demanded constant care. The human farmer lived alone at the edge of the settlement, far from the crowded markets and noisy trading hubs. Most settlers preferred safer work inside the colony domes, but he chose open land and hard labor. It gave him a sense of control in a universe that rarely offered certainty. Each morning, he walked the long rows with steady steps, checking irrigation lines and monitoring soil scanners attached to small poles that blinked faint blue lights. The last harvest had been poor. Nutrients were fading, and despite everything he tried, the crops struggled to grow strong roots. Many neighbors had already abandoned farming, turning instead to trade or transport jobs. But he stayed. He believed the land could still recover if given enough time. That evening, the sky turned orange as the suns lowered toward the horizon. Dust drifted across the fields like a slow-moving wave. He was preparing to shut down the tractors when he noticed movement near the boundary markers at the edge of his property. At first, he thought it was an animal. The frontier was full of strange creatures that wandered between settlements searching for water. But as he moved closer, he saw a figure standing still against the fading light. She was tall and thin, her posture rigid with exhaustion. Several small shapes huddled behind her. As he approached, he realized they were children, alien children. He stopped a few steps away, careful to keep his hands visible. On the frontier, sudden movements could mean danger. The woman's appearance marked her as belonging to a species he had only seen in passing at distant trade stations. Her skin carried a faint shimmer under the sunlight, and her eyes reflected light differently than human eyes. Her clothing was worn and dusty, clearly damaged from long travel. The children behind her watched silently. Their faces showed hunger more than fear. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then she lowered her head slightly, a gesture that felt heavy with meaning. "I will work your fields, human," she said quietly. Her voice was strained but steady. "Just feed my hungry children." The words hung in the air. He felt a familiar caution rise inside him. Trust was rare out here. Helping strangers could bring trouble, especially when those strangers belonged to species entangled in conflicts humans barely understood. He studied her carefully. She stood straight despite obvious fatigue, shielding the children behind her with protective instinct. "What happened to you?" he asked gently. She hesitated, as if deciding how much to reveal. "We have traveled far," she said. "We need food, shelter, nothing more." One of the children stepped forward slightly, staring at the rows of crops with wide eyes. The child's movements were slow, like someone conserving the last of their strength. The farmer felt something tighten in his chest. He had known hunger before. Many settlers had. He glanced back toward his house, then toward the storage units near the barn. His supplies were not endless, but he had enough to share for a while. "You don't need to offer labor just to eat," he said. Her expression shifted, firm but respectful. "We do not accept charity without giving something in return." There was pride in her voice, even now. He nodded slowly. "Then come," he said. "Let's get the children fed first." The tension in her shoulders eased slightly, though she remained cautious as they followed him toward the farmhouse. The children walked quietly, their small hands clutching pieces of fabric from her clothing as if afraid she might disappear. Inside the farmhouse, warm light filled the space. The room was simple but clean, filled with tools, maps, and old photographs from distant worlds. He prepared food quickly, choosing soft items that would be easy for hungry stomachs. The children hesitated at first, looking toward their mother for permission. When she gave a small nod, they began eating slowly, then faster as hunger took over. The farmer watched quietly, feeling both relief and concern. He wondered how long they had gone without proper meals. After a while, the woman spoke again. "You take risk by allowing us here." "Everything out here is risk," he replied with a faint smile. She studied him as if trying to understand something deeper. When the children finished eating, their energy returned slightly. One of them looked around the room with curiosity, touching a small model tractor sitting on a shelf. "They can stay in the spare room tonight," he said. "We will figure out tomorrow later." She inclined her head again in gratitude. The next morning began earlier than usual. When he stepped outside, he found her already walking through the fields, examining the soil with focused attention. She crouched near a plant, touching the leaves carefully. "You start early," he said. "Where I come from," she answered, "survival begins before sunrise." He watched as she studied the irrigation system and nutrient monitors. She moved with quiet confidence as if farming was familiar to her. "You know agriculture?" he asked. She nodded. "Our people learn to grow life on difficult worlds." She pointed toward a section of soil where growth had been weakest. "Your water distribution is uneven. The roots struggle to reach depth." He frowned slightly. "I've adjusted those settings many times." She adjusted a small valve with precise movement. "The soil remembers patterns. You must change them gradually." He observed silently as she explained techniques he had never considered. Her methods blended science with instinct, and though he felt skeptical at first, he also sensed knowledge behind her words. Throughout the day, they worked side by side. Communication was sometimes awkward, but they found rhythm in shared effort. The children rested nearby, occasionally helping with small tasks. By evening, the fields looked slightly different. Subtle changes had been made, and the soil sensors began showing improved readings. "You might have saved my harvest," he admitted. She shook her head. "We saved it together." Days passed. The children grew stronger, their laughter slowly returning. The farm felt less lonely than it had in years. But as the work progressed, he noticed something unusual in the sky one afternoon. A faint glimmer moved far above the clouds. A drone. He watched it carefully as it hovered briefly before disappearing beyond the horizon. That night, he felt unease settle over him. Out here, nothing happened without reason, and something had begun watching them. The mornings changed after she arrived. Before, the farm had been quiet except for the sound of machines and the wind moving through dry plants. Now there were footsteps, soft voices, and the small laughter of children learning to feel safe again. The human farmer noticed how different the land felt when more people worked together. Even the air seemed lighter. He woke before sunrise, as he always did, but she was already outside when he stepped onto the porch. She stood in the field with a tool in her hand, studying the irrigation lines while the first light of the twin suns painted long shadows across the soil. "You do not rest much," he said as he approached. She looked at him calmly. "Rest comes when work is finished and your fields need much care," he smiled faintly. "You're not wrong." They walked through the rows together. She showed him small changes she had made during the early hours. The water flow had been adjusted again, and she had rearranged soil sensors to create a more balanced pattern. He checked the readings on his handheld device. The numbers surprised him. The moisture levels were improving faster than expected. "I tried something similar last year," he said. "It didn't work." "You tried alone," she replied gently. "Sometimes new ideas need more than one perspective." He thought about that as they continued working. Her presence had changed more than just the farm. The loneliness that had settled over him for years was slowly fading. The children came outside after breakfast. They followed him with curiosity, asking simple questions about machines and tools. He showed them how to plant seeds properly, how to check for insects without harming the crops, and how to repair small parts of the irrigation system. They learned quickly. One of the children laughed when a small robot rolled past carrying tools. The sound surprised him. He realized he had not heard laughter on the farm for a very long time. Later that day, a neighbor arrived on a transport bike. The visitor slowed near the field, clearly surprised to see unfamiliar figures working alongside the farmer. "I heard you took in strangers," the neighbor said, glancing carefully at the alien woman and her children. "They needed help," the farmer answered simply. The neighbor nodded but looked uneasy. "Be careful, not everyone out here is friendly, and some species bring trouble." The alien woman continued working without reacting, but he noticed her shoulders stiffen slightly. After the neighbor left, he spoke quietly. "People are cautious here. Frontier life teaches that." She paused before replying. "Where I come from, caution is survival. But so is trust." He understood that feeling. Over the next few days, the changes in the field became more obvious. Plants that had struggled before began to grow stronger. Leaves turned deeper shades of green, and the soil texture improved under careful treatment. The farm started to attract attention. Small transport vehicles passed more often. Curious settlers stopped by, asking questions about the sudden success. Some brought supplies or exchanged advice. Others simply watched from a distance. The farmer noticed how carefully she behaved around strangers. She remained polite but guarded, never sharing too much about her past. One evening, while they repaired a damaged irrigation pipe, he finally asked gently, "You said your colony was destroyed. What happened?" She hesitated for a long moment. The wind moved softly through the crops, carrying the scent of growing plants. "There was conflict," she said quietly. "Powerful groups fought over resources. Our world became a battlefield. We were not warriors. We were growers, builders. But that did not protect us. And you escaped." "I escaped with my children," she said. "Many others did not." Her voice held sadness but also strength. He nodded slowly, not pressing further. On the frontier, everyone carried stories they did not always want to share. That night, after the children had gone to sleep, they sat outside under the stars. The sky above the planet was filled with distant lights, some natural, some artificial. "Humans are strange," she said suddenly. He laughed softly. "That's not new information." "You help even when it makes your life harder," she continued. "Many species only help when it benefits them directly." He considered her words. "Humans do that too sometimes, but out here we rely on each other. Without cooperation, no one survives." She watched the horizon thoughtfully. The next morning, he noticed something unusual again. The sky felt different, as if being watched. He scanned the area with his handheld device but found nothing. Later, while adjusting a soil monitor, one of the children pointed upward. "There," the child said quietly. A small object moved across the sky, almost invisible against the sunlight. It hovered for a moment before disappearing behind distant clouds. He frowned. "Another drone," he muttered. She followed his gaze, and for the first time since arriving, fear showed clearly on her face. "They have found us," she whispered. "Who?" She did not answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward her children, making sure they were far enough away. "The group that destroyed our colony," she said finally. "They search for survivors. They do not like witnesses." He felt tension rise in his chest. "You think they are watching the farm?" She nodded slowly. "It is possible." He considered his options carefully. The farm had limited defenses. Frontier settlers relied more on isolation than security systems. "We don't know for sure," he said calmly, "but if someone is watching, we stay prepared." Over the next days, he kept a closer eye on the sky. The drone did not return openly, but he felt its presence. Despite the growing tension, life on the farm continued. The children grew stronger, running between rows of crops and helping with simple tasks. Their laughter made the place feel alive. One afternoon, a small group of neighboring settlers arrived together. They had heard rumors about the improved harvest and wanted to see the techniques being used. The alien woman explained her methods carefully, focusing on soil balance and natural growth cycles. The settlers listened with interest, impressed by her knowledge. For the first time, she seemed less guarded. After they left, she turned to him. "Your people are curious." "We like learning new things," he replied. "And you share knowledge freely," she added. "That's how we all get better." As the sun set that evening, the fields glowed with healthy growth. The farmer felt hope returning for the first time in months. But deep inside, he sensed that their quiet days might not last much longer. Because somewhere above them, unseen eyes continued to watch. The feeling of being watched did not disappear. Even when the sky looked empty and the wind moved peacefully across the fields, the human farmer sensed something had changed. The land still responded to their care, the crops continued growing stronger, and the children laughed as they ran between rows. But beneath the calm surface there was tension. He tried not to show his concern openly. The children deserved to feel safe, and the alien woman had already endured more fear than anyone should carry. Early one morning, he walked through the fields while the light of the twin suns slowly filled the horizon. He checked every sensor carefully, more focused than usual. The numbers looked good. Moisture levels balanced, soil nutrients improving, and plant growth ahead of schedule. Under normal conditions, he would have felt proud, but his attention kept drifting to the sky. When he returned to the farmhouse, he found her standing near the entrance, watching the distance with sharp focus. "You saw something?" he asked. "I felt something," she said quietly. "Where I come from, danger often arrives silently," he nodded. Frontier life had taught him the same lesson. They continued their work, but both remained alert. The children noticed the change in mood, though they did not understand the reason. One of them asked if something was wrong. "Just being careful," he said gently. "That is part of living on the frontier." The day passed without incident, but near sunset, a distant sound reached his ears. It was faint at first, like wind moving through metal, but it grew louder quickly. A ship. He stepped outside and shielded his eyes from the sunlight. A sleek vessel appeared in the sky, descending slowly toward the far edge of the fields. The alien woman froze beside him, her expression turned pale. "They found us," she whispered. The ship landed beyond the boundary markers, kicking up dust that moved across the ground like a storm. The farmer felt his heartbeat quicken. Several figures stepped out, wearing uniforms that looked precise and controlled. Their movements were calm, almost mechanical. He turned toward her. "Stay with the children, let me talk first." She hesitated but nodded, guiding the children toward the farmhouse. The farmer walked forward slowly, keeping his posture relaxed but ready. The visitors approached with measured steps. "We are here on official business," one of them said. The voice came through a translator device, smooth and emotionless. "What business?" the farmer asked calmly. "You are harboring individuals belonging to a contracted labor group. They must be returned immediately." He frowned slightly. "They are guests here, and they are free." The figure tilted its head slightly. "Records indicate otherwise. Their species entered a binding agreement generations ago. All surviving members are required to fulfill assigned roles." "That sounds like forced work," the farmer said firmly. "It is lawful," the figure replied. He felt anger rise but kept his voice steady. "Not on my land." The air grew heavy with tension. Behind him, he heard footsteps. The alien woman stepped forward slowly, standing beside him despite his earlier request. The children remained inside, watching through the window. "I will go," she said quietly. "Do not endanger yourself." He looked at her in surprise. "No, you don't owe them anything." She shook her head gently. "You have already given us more than we expected. I cannot allow harm to come to you because of us." The figures from the ship watched silently, waiting. The farmer thought quickly. Fighting directly was impossible. The ship was too advanced, and he had only farming equipment and basic tools. But he also knew something else. Frontier settlers were not alone. He activated a small communicator hidden on his belt and sent a signal. It was not a distress call, but a message shared among nearby farmers and traders. Help needed. Unwelcome visitors. The response came quickly. Small signals appeared on his device, showing others had received the message. The leading figure noticed the movement. "You are contacting others. That will not change the outcome." "We'll see," the farmer replied calmly. Minutes passed. The wind moved across the field, carrying dust and tension with it. Then, one by one, transport vehicles appeared on the horizon. Small ships, bikes, and walkers approached from different directions. Neighbors, traders, and settlers gathered quietly, forming a loose circle around the landing site. No one held weapons openly, but their presence sent a clear message. The alien visitors paused, calculating. "You involve outsiders in a legal matter," the leader said. "This is a community," the farmer replied, "and we look after each other." A woman from a nearby farm stepped forward. "We've heard about this family," she said firmly. "They work hard, they belong here if they choose." Others nodded in agreement. The alien leader remained silent for a moment, clearly reassessing the situation. "Resistance is unnecessary," the figure said finally. "Our claim remains valid." The alien woman stepped forward again, her voice stronger now. "Your claim is built on old agreements made without consent. We did not choose them." The settlers murmured among themselves. The farmer felt pride in her courage. When she first arrived, she had been quiet and guarded. Now she stood tall, protecting her children and herself. One of the ships in orbit sent a signal, visible as a faint beam of light across the sky. The leader received the transmission and paused. The silence stretched. Finally, the leader spoke again. "We will withdraw temporarily, but this matter is not finished." The figures returned to their ship, leaving behind swirling dust as the vessel lifted into the sky and disappeared beyond the clouds. The tension slowly eased. The farmer exhaled deeply, only now realizing how tight his muscles had been. Neighbors approached, offering support in quiet words. Some shared supplies, others simply stood nearby to show solidarity. After a while, the crowd dispersed, leaving the farm peaceful again. The alien woman looked at him with deep emotion. "You risked much today." He shrugged slightly. "That's what humans do sometimes." She smiled faintly for the first time since the ship arrived. That evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset, the fields looked stronger than ever. The crops moved gently in the wind, a symbol of growth and resilience. But both of them knew the situation was not over. The visitors had promised to return. And when they did, the farmer suspected the next encounter would be even more difficult. The farm felt quieter after the visitors left, but the silence carried a different weight now. Before, the human farmer had lived with the natural risks of frontier life: storms, poor harvests, equipment failure. Now another kind of uncertainty hovered over the land, something less predictable than weather and harder to fix than broken machinery. He woke before sunrise again, stepping outside into cool air that smelled faintly of growing plants. The twin suns had not yet risen, and the sky was filled with soft colors that shifted slowly from dark blue to pale gold. He walked through the fields carefully, touching leaves and checking soil with familiar motions. The crops were strong now, healthier than they had been in years. The alien woman's knowledge had changed everything. Even the ground felt alive beneath his boots. Behind him, he heard soft footsteps. She approached quietly, carrying a small tool in her hand. "You did not sleep much," she said gently. "Neither did you," he replied. She nodded slightly. "My children slept well, that matters most." They worked side by side without speaking for a while. The shared silence felt comfortable, filled with understanding rather than distance. After some time, he said, "They will come back." "Yes," she answered simply. Her calm acceptance surprised him. He expected fear, but instead he saw determination in her eyes. "I will not run again," she added quietly. "Running never truly brings safety. It only delays the moment when you must stand." He respected that. Frontier life taught similar lessons. Later that morning, several neighbors arrived again. Word had spread quickly through nearby settlements about what happened. Some brought spare parts, others offered help repairing defensive systems or improving communication networks. One older farmer shook his head as he looked at the sky. "If they come back with more ships, we'll need a plan." The human farmer nodded. "We don't want conflict, but we also won't hand anyone over." The alien woman listened silently, gratitude visible in her expression. Together, they worked on strengthening the farm's communication system. It was not meant for battle, only for sending signals and warnings, but even simple technology could make a difference if used wisely. Days passed, and the tension slowly blended into routine. The children returned to playing and helping in the fields. They learned how to plant seeds in straight rows, how to clean tools after work, and how to watch the sky for changing weather patterns. One evening, the youngest child asked the farmer, "Why did you help us when you didn't know us?" He thought carefully before answering. "Because someone helped me once when I needed it," he said finally. "And because doing the right thing matters more than doing the easy thing." The child nodded slowly, as if storing the lesson for later. The alien woman watched this exchange quietly, her eyes reflecting deep emotion. A few days later, the sky changed again. The sound came first, distant engines breaking through the quiet air. The farmer stepped outside immediately, already expecting what he would see. Several ships appeared above the horizon, larger than before. They moved slowly but confidently, positioning themselves high above the farm. Neighbors began arriving again, responding to the signal he sent through the communication network. This time, more people came than before, not only humans, but also members of other species who had heard about the situation. The farm became a gathering place, a symbol of something larger than one family's struggle. The alien woman stood beside him as the ships hovered above. "They bring more authority this time," she said quietly. A message came through the communication system requesting negotiation. He accepted. A small shuttle descended, landing at the edge of the field. The same leader stepped out, accompanied by others. "You have gathered support," the leader observed calmly. "We stand together," the farmer replied. The leader activated a projection device, displaying legal documents filled with complex symbols and contracts. "These agreements remain valid under interstellar law," the leader said. "The individual and her offspring belong to our labor network." The crowd murmured with disapproval. The alien woman stepped forward. "Those agreements were forced upon our people without true choice." The leader remained emotionless. "Legality does not require consent from every individual." The farmer felt anger rise but kept his voice steady. "Maybe not where you come from, but here people choose their own lives." Another settler spoke up. "We've reviewed old records. Many contracts like these were created during unstable times. Some were never verified properly. A technician from a nearby settlement stepped forward with a portable device. "We found inconsistencies," she said, projecting additional data into the air. "These agreements were modified after they were signed. There are missing authorization markers." The leader paused, clearly analyzing the new information. More settlers shared evidence, showing that the corporation controlling the labor contracts had manipulated records to maintain control over vulnerable populations. The atmosphere shifted. The leader received another transmission from the ships above. After a long moment, the projection disappeared. "Our organization will review these claims," the leader said finally. "Until then, enforcement will be suspended." Relief moved through the crowd like a wave. The alien woman closed her eyes briefly, breathing deeply as tension left her shoulders. "You are free to remain," the leader added. "For now." The shuttle lifted away, returning to the ships. Slowly, one by one, the vessels turned and left the sky. The farm grew quiet again. Neighbors smiled and embraced one another. Some laughed softly, others simply stood in peaceful silence, watching the empty horizon. The farmer turned toward her. "Looks like you're staying." She smiled warmly, something he had rarely seen before. "It seems so." Life on the farm changed after that day. The story spread across nearby systems, turning the farm into a symbol of cooperation and compassion. Travelers arrived not to claim or control, but to learn. The alien woman began teaching others her agricultural techniques. Humans shared their own methods in return. The land became stronger, producing harvests beyond expectation. The children grew confident, running freely through fields that once felt like a distant dream. One evening, as the twin suns set and golden light covered the crops, the farmer stood at the edge of the field with her beside him. "You said humans are strange," he said with a small smile. She laughed softly. "Yes, but now I understand why." "And why is that?" "Because humans choose kindness even when survival is difficult," she said. "That is true strength." He looked across the thriving land, feeling quiet pride. The harvest season arrived soon after, filling the air with celebration. Humans and aliens worked side by side, gathering crops under warm sunlight. What began as a desperate request for food had grown into something much larger, a place where trust created new beginnings. And as the fields stretched toward the horizon, alive with growth, it became clear that sometimes the smallest acts of compassion could change entire worlds.